Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Move Daily Talks. I'm your host, Tracy Steen, and today I welcome Dr. Tracey Smith. Tracy, already she has a great name, is a dedicated advocate for nutrition and holistic wellness coaching. With a 25-year career in nutrition and exercise physiology, she brings a unique blend of knowledge and skill in guiding individuals toward optimal health and well-being. Drawing from her own experience as a mom with a full life career and volunteer in her local community, she understands the challenges of balancing a hectic lifestyle while prioritizing personal health. She empowers individuals to make time for self-care amidst their busy schedules, providing practical strategies to overcome perfectionism, to manage stress, and to cultivate sustainable habits. Today, we're going to be talking about ditching that dinner time scramble. I don't know about you, but I am not a fan of cooking. I used to like it, but now it is a scramble at times to find healthy options to put on the table to ensure that I'm getting that balanced macro and micronutrients. So I'm certain she's going to give us a lot of great tips today. I'm looking forward to it. Would you welcome with me, Tracey Smith? All right. I am so happy to welcome Tracy to the podcast. And today we are jumping into these conversations about nutrition. And I know for a lot of us, this is the one thing that can hang us up. We've got progress forward, perhaps in our fitness, maybe in our wellness journey. And then when it comes to nutrition, we just are all over the place. So if that's you, that's common. Just know that. But there is a lot of help out there. And what we need to do is begin to sort of sift through the weeds. There's a lot of information on the internet, and I understand that it can be really overwhelming. So this is why I've brought Tracy on today, folks, because she can thin slice, give us a little thin slice of what the important factors are when it comes to nutrition. And today we're going to dive deep into things like meal prep and food prep. We'll just talk about those macro and micronutrients. We're gonna talk all things nutrition and how to make it easier for you so that you can reach your goals, so that you can progress forward toward those targets. And that really is the key. So, Tracy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy, a fellow Tracy.
I know. Were you born in the 70s?
80s, oh, 78, I was, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So 70s, that's a
Yeah.
very popular name.
Yeah.
Is your middle name Lynn?
It is Jane, my mom's name. So
Okay. Okay. I always ask Tracy's when I meet them if their middle name is Lynn because it's very common. A nice Tracy Lynn. Anyway, no one cares. But we are here to talk today about nutrition. So let's just start off this conversation. I'd love to know how you sort of got into this field yourself. Why has this been a soapbox for you? Why is this so important in your own life?
yeah. So I'm a registered dietitian. My PhD is in nutrition, and I have been interested in nutrition. I've been an athlete all my life, and so that is something that has just I noticed a change. Like when I was in college, I was at played Division I tennis at UConn, and nutrition really made a big difference in terms of my performance. And it made a big difference in both ways when I wasn't eating enough. And when I noticed when I did eat better, how much better my nutrition got. So that's kind of the crux of it. And then when I was looking into college majors, I started physical therapy. That was like the first thing. And I'm like, this, and then I was in physical therapy myself. I'm like, this is not for me. And I'm like, why don't I just do what I love? Like, do what I know, like what's been, helpful for me. And that's how I got into nutrition in the first
Yeah, it's
place.
fun when something really resonates with us and then you
Yeah.
see how much of a difference it
Yeah.
makes. And I like that you said sort of when you were under eating or when you were
Yes.
eating regular, like that
Yeah.
can really enhance and impact our own performance, can't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we are talking about women who struggle, of course, with that time of eating, feeling maybe like they just, don't have a plan moving forward in terms of what they should be eating. What are some of the things that you coach women on when it comes to looking at sort of like the 101 of nutrition, some of those basic skills that we should be or could be incorporating day to day?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of like what I like to call low-hanging fruit. And now that I'm saying that, no pun intended, in terms of like, so how often are you eating? Like looking at your meal frequency. Are you skipping, that first meal of the day and not eating until, 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon not on purpose? Like it's just things are so busy, and you're not fueling yourself, and then you're just starving the rest of the day. Are you, eating breakfast and then just working straight through lunch, and then you get home and you inhale the refrigerator, you inhale like the first thing you see because you're starving. So really taking a look at what is your frequency of eating? Are you maximizing your hunger hormones in the best ways possible? Are you if you're in terms of fitness, if you're weight training, are you giving your body the protein it needs? And so frequency of food that way, and then really looking at, okay, what are your meals made of? Are you building, I think that the easiest thing we can do as active women is to build our meals around protein. I'm not talking, 200 grams of protein a day. I'm just talking about anchoring your meals around protein. I usually suggest, I mean, it's very individual, it depends on the person, but I typically suggest about, 30, at least 30 grams a day, 30 grams a meal of protein to anchor as a basis. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, that is your building block of muscle. That is what is going to help increase satiety, of course. Uh, I had this client once who was showing me her food logs, and one of the things she showed me once was a plate of, it was a whole grain bun, which was great. She had a sweet potato patty in there, and then she had sweet potato fries on the side. And she's like, I'm eating healthy. This is great. Except I'm like, where's the protein? It was
Mhm.
so void of protein. And I think sometimes we can get into this situation where we are eating healthier foods, healthier options. They're, minimally processed foods, maybe lots of vegetables or fruits, but oftentimes we look at our plate and we neglect to add that important protein source. So, yeah, adding that protein is important. How do you coach women on looking for foods that are high in protein, dense in protein, or what do you even say to them, in terms of how to get that adequate amount in for a day?
Yeah. I say, what do you like to eat?
Yeah,
That's the
that's
first thing.
great. Yes. Then
Yeah.
you're going to eat
Like,
more of it if you like it. Absolutely.
right. Yeah. So I take a look at what they're already eating, and then I tailor my approach there. So for a lot of busy women, it's sometimes is that, yeah, I like chicken. I like, meatballs. I like these types of foods, but I just don't have time to make them. Like I don't have time for it. And so one of the things that I'm big on that I coach on is just prepping like large batches of protein, and then you can mix and match, pull them out. You can do so many things with them, in terms of whether it's, making a big batch of meatballs that you have for the week, making a big batch of like ground turkey or ground chicken. You can easily add different seasonings to that, mix and match your vegetables, throw it into salad, make a, taco wrap with it. Add some taco seasoning. There's just so many easy things you can do that I think we don't think about. People are just like, oh, they'll say, I'm just so bored with chicken, or I'm just so bored with that. And I mean, the first thing I do with coaching is to say, well, can you be bored? Like, why is that a problem?
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Why is that a problem to be bored? Is it our society where we need that sort of instant gratification, entertainment, like entertain me, make me feel something exciting all of the time? Do you think that's where it comes from?
Yeah, I think it comes from a lot of things. I think it comes from, it needs to be special. I think food needs to be special. Food needs to be joy, right? And it can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can be fuel. And you can make things taste good and it still might be boring. Like our brain is so interesting, right? Our brain, our primitive brain, our survival brain has not evolved at all. That part of our brain, it wants to seek joy. It wants to avoid discomfort, and it
Mhm.
wants to conserve energy to do what's easy, and do what it's always done. And so if we've, lived our whole life being like food is joy, food is fun, I want that, I want what I want when I want it. Well,
Yeah.
that kind of thinking usually doesn't, help us reach our health goals. So really just checking ourselves to say, okay, I know, brain, I hear you. I hear that you think this is boring, or I hear that you want the, super, high fat, rich food right now. And there's a time for that, but that's not what we decided. decided to eat. And I think too, the other thing is like these, we talk about societal beliefs and these expectations that we set for ourselves that meals should look a certain way. They should be home cooked. They should be, I should eat a different thing every day. Like it's not good to eat the same thing every day. I call BS on that. So
Okay. Yeah. What about having that diversity of food that we know is important for gut health?
I think that you can be diverse with certain things, but I don't necessarily think it has to be the protein, right? So I
Yeah.
think we can, yeah, so I think we can vary, the vegetables that we eat. I think there's so many opportunities, if you have trouble with, cutting up and prepping fresh vegetables or roasting vegetables, you can do that ahead of time. But there's so many different offerings now of frozen vegetables that are just as nutrient dense, and there are so many different varieties. So you can get between the fruits and the veggies, you can get all those beautiful colors in terms of the variety that way. The grain products, like those things are easy to do. It's simple. But I just don't think that the protein necessarily needs to change a ton for to maximize gut health. Yeah.
I would totally
Yeah.
agree with that too. My son actually just bought this bag of fire roasted veggies from Costco in the freezer section. And they're typically they do that flash frozen. So they have all their nutrients still intact. They're packed in there. And exactly, you can switch it up that way, right? You can buy a bag of this type and a bag of that type and then throw some fresh veggies in. But I like what you said about the protein. Like how much more fancy can we make the protein, right? Like, do you have to make it
Yeah.
so different every time? Could you change the flavors? And that's such a great tip. I think you could make it Greek flavor, you could make it Tex-Mex flavor, you could make it Asian flavor or whatever. You could just switch your flavors. And I love the tip about really doing that batch prep of your protein and having it available. So if things are visible and convenient, according to Dr. Brian Wayne Sink, he writes the book Mindless Eating: Why We Eat More Than We Think. And it's an older book, but it's a great resource to get you thinking that, we need to have that mindful approach to food. But he talks about things being visible and convenient. So if you have prepped protein in the fridge and then you're making your salad at lunchtime or even breakfast and you're scrambling, one or two eggs and thinking, okay, that's only about 12 grams of protein. How do I
Yeah.
bump this up a little bit? Well, I could add some cottage cheese to that. Well, I could add some sliced up chicken to that I've already prepped. And if it's easy, if it's a convenient, you're going to be more apt to make those wise choices.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing, like when you talk about breakfast, it's so interesting. Like we have this, I can just speak, in North America, the societal belief of what breakfast should look like, right? It's eggs, it's cereal, it's bagels. It
Bread,
can,
yeah.
yeah, like that first meal of the day can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, it
And
could be
so if we
chicken salad. That's right.
Right? So if we can
Yeah.
kind of like break out of these like expectations, whether they're societal beliefs or your own preconceived notions, and just open up our mind a little bit, it's pretty remarkable what can happen, you know?
Yeah, I love that concept as well. We had some of our members showing some of their meal prep, and exactly we wanted to make that first meal go away from the sweet breakfast that is a typical, like you said, North American choice for some of us, and move towards something more savory. And so a bunch of them were posting photos of their dinner for breakfast, right? Like their leftover dinner and having that for breakfast. So I
Yeah.
think it's just getting your brain wrapped around that and recognizing that that can be a choice for you. And then just give it a shot. Try it out. Like make extra for dinner the night before and then have it for breakfast the next day, right?
Just being open-minded and really just like you said, experimenting. Like try it out. Be okay with experimenting and pivoting when it's not working for you. And sometimes it's just a question of leveling up, that idea that we can level up in increments, right? So maybe you try to add some, 10 or 20 grams of protein to a breakfast that had zero protein, and then try it and see how it goes. And then you can level up from there. It doesn't need to be this all of a sudden, okay, I'm going to completely overhaul my diet. You can take it in increments, and a little bit is better than nothing, right? Like that all or something as opposed to all or nothing, I think is a really beautiful way to do it and really sustainable, frankly.
Yes, because I think so often we put this pressure on ourselves to do the all or nothing, or we'll maybe observe someone else doing it all. And we think, well, if I can't do it like that, then forget it. I'm not doing anything. but something is always better than nothing. And just making those small, like you said, increments forward is still going to lead you down the path to better health, right?
For sure.
It's sometimes it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps sideways, 1 step back, but we're still inching up the ladder. And I think that's important to remember. For women struggling with time, like, feeling like we never have enough of it, how do we make time to feed ourselves in ways that align with our own health priorities? Like if we want to build muscle, if we want to optimize health, but we're busy, we've got maybe aging parents, maybe we've got really busy careers. I know for me, I'm at the height of my career, so like super, super busy in this. How do we make ourselves that top priority?
Yeah, I relate to this so much, feeling like we never have enough time. I'm a working mom with a 15-year-old and 11-year-old that are in all kinds of sports and other activities and events, a majority of the weekends and the weeknights and the weekends, not to mention, tournaments and travel games all weekend long. And, my husband and I have a lot going on as well besides work. So it's, we coach them in their activities as well. So yeah, I feel this to my core. And I think that there are really two keys to making time to feed ourselves in a way that aligns with our health priorities. And the first one that we've touched on a little bit is just to stop overcomplicating it and to keep it simple. Feeding ourselves in a way that supports our health goals, it just doesn't need to be complicated. And there's actually tremendous value in not overcomplicating it, especially when starting out on this journey, right? And then the second would be ditching the self-judgment. Again, we discussed this a little bit, and ditching the self-judgment and the unrealistic expectations that come up when we think about what we should do. We have this idea of what our meals should look like. Lots of recipes, tons of variety, like Pinterest-worthy meals you see everywhere, right? You can certainly choose to include those fancy, complex recipes and those gourmet quality meals, but you definitely don't have to. And we can really redefine our expectations when it comes to feeding ourselves and our family if you take on that role for your family, so that it really works and it fits our lifestyle.
Yeah, I agree with that. We do tend to overcomplicate it, and it can be pretty simple. And we did talk about what some of that low hanging fruit is that we can choose, right? Just having a nice balanced macronutrients, so healthy fat options, healthy protein options, complex carbohydrates, looking at that fiber component and just kind of looking down at your plate and saying, okay, what's on here that's going to help me optimize my health? Right? I find that as we age, our appetites do tend to decline with age, especially if you're older in your 60s, 70s, it starts to decline. And so you really want to optimize the amount of calories that you're eating. And a lot of things can be super calorie dense, like cookies and sweets and treats and, high fat things. So if you choose those, just know that your stomach probably is not going to have a lot of room left for the other things that are really important to optimize health. And so looking at the plate and ensuring that you're getting that good balance, but also having things that you enjoy and adding those treats from time to time, right? But looking at the plate and ensuring that it has that balance and that you're maximizing all of those nutrients with the calories that you're consuming. And then I think, especially if you're in a calorie deficit, if you're trying to lose body fat or reduce your weight amount, that's really important too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I like, when you're in an energy deficit, like you want to be in an energy deficit on purpose for that, like to lose body fat. I think really maximizing our hunger hormones there in terms of, spacing out our meals appropriately. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. Like my general rule of thumb would be like every 4 hours. For some people, it might be less time. For some, it might be more. It just depends on what works for you. But I think that that's and eating an adequate amount of calories at those meals. I think sometimes you get into the when you are trying to lose weight, you could get into this whole mindset of like, 200 or 300 calories at each sitting. That's just really not enough food to feed your muscles to actually maintain the muscle mass as you're losing weight. As we lose weight, we know that it is likely we will lose a little bit of muscle in the process, but we want to maintain whatever muscle we can as we're losing weight.
Right. And one of the things that we teach here at Move Daily is definitely to mitigate that muscle loss because we just definitely, after the age of 40, you're already declining, right, in lean muscle tissue. So you want to do everything you can. So we're going to incorporate regular resistance training. We're going to eat that adequate amount of muscle building protein. And then we're going to lose in a slow way. We're not going to do anything drastic. We're not going to do a really huge deficit. We're going to do that really slowly over time, even setting that deficit somewhere between 250 and 300 calories per day, as opposed to the usual 500 calories a day that we often hear coached. So, do you agree with that
Yeah, for
process?
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's important for women to remember that when they are going through that process, that 250 calorie a day deficit, that it is going to take time.
Yeah.
And to instead focus on the everyday actions that will get you there, as opposed to the number on the scale. Right? Because I think so much like, even if you're only weighing once a week, you look to that number on the scale as a measure of what I did this week, did it work? Did it work? And you're not going to see like a half a pound weight loss or a pound weight loss. That could be due to anything. That could be due to if you haven't gone to the bathroom as much during the week. It could be due to hydration. There are so many things that you could be retaining water because you didn't sleep, you haven't slept well the past couple of nights. There are just so many different things it could be because of. So not getting hung up on the number on the scale as an indicator of, is my diet working? Is my plan working?
You talk about meal prep and meal prep and meal planning. So, but you say there's a difference between the two of them. Could you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it really doesn't need to neither meal prep nor meal planning needs to be this complicated, time-consuming process. Meal planning simply means that you plan ahead what you're going to eat. You might plan the day before, the morning of, or at the beginning of the week for the rest of the week. Meal prep, or more simply food prep, just means that you're making food ahead of time. So maybe you choose to set aside an hour or two on a Sunday to do this, but you don't have to. It's really about keeping an open mind and broadening your perspective of what meal prepping is and isn't. And consider that there are many ways to prep food ahead of time, and you for sure can fit any of those approaches, at least one of those approaches, into your current lifestyle. No, I was just going to say the real name of the game here is to prevent decision fatigue, right? Like we make so many decisions all day long, and whatever we can do to plan ahead using our prefrontal cortex, that other part of our brain that's responsible for higher level thinking. When we do that and we plan ahead, not only do we reduce decision fatigue, but we also make it more likely that we'll stick to our plan and not listen to that toddler brain, that primitive brain that wants what it wants right now, right? That has all these urges. If we plan ahead, we give our brain direction ahead of time. And I think that's really a key piece to meeting our health goals.
I agree with that. I know Dr. Andrew Huberman calls it limbic friction.
Mhm.
And you have this space between where then you have to make a decision, right? And and that just causes a stall. It can totally cause a stall. What we want to do is have habits that are automated. And so if you make that plan to do that meal prep and plan out forward thinking throughout the week, what am I going to have? What are my options? Where is the point where I can take out that friction in between and that fatigue that like you talked about and just make that decision that is going to help optimize my health and my goals. Yeah, that is really important. And so do you see people who do the planning? Is it a game changer for them? Like, does it make all of the difference?
It really does if you're patient with it and if you allow yourself to practice and work through it. I think sometimes, we want to be good at it right away, right? Like we say, oh, I need to be good at it. I need to be perfect at this, right? We have this expectation of ourselves. It never works that way. Like it's just one of those things. Like when you were, if you have kids and you watch them to learn how to walk, they didn't know how to walk and run right away. Like we didn't either. We learn things and it takes time. And so just giving yourself the space and grace to actually practice this process. And again, like now I'm at the point where, I mean, have come up with a process and refined this process for my family and what works well for us. Like now I prep all of our main meals, in an hour or two. on a Sunday. But if I'm working with a client who is just starting out, we literally might just start out by making extra one night for her to have the next 2 days for lunch. And that is just a simple way to get started with it. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be perfect. You just add a little more as you go.
I love that you said that. It's almost like a skill that can be learned. And as you practice it, you're going to get better. I think sometimes we just think we should be there. We should have this skill, right? If we know how to cook, we should just be able to do that. But the fact that, just like you said, it's not, you can't go into the gym and expect your biceps to increase in muscle size in 1 week, right? It's going to
Yeah.
take weeks, months, years even to really be able to build and to sustain a habit that we want to do. So I think that's a really important thing to remember, that it's not an overnight thing, but it's a skill. And if you practice it, you will get better.
Yeah, for sure. And I even have, women come to me for help that their first thing that they say is, I can't cook. Like, I don't know how to cook. Like, I just, haven't it until this point. Like, I can make pasta, like I can do simple things. But my response there is, I bet you that you could take ground turkey and put it in a bowl and add some salt and pepper and make it into a ball and put it in the oven. I
I
bet you could
bet.
do that.
I bet you
Yeah.
could. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have faith that you can put, ground meat in a pan, on the stove and ground it up and add some seasoning to it. And so just really showing them, because there is a fear there, right? Especially because they think they should know how to do this and they should be good at this. So getting them past that fear of, hey, let's just experiment and just try these two things and see what happens. We can always refine the recipe. We can always change it. And, if you overcook it, we can always dial that back, right? But just experimenting and just giving them the confidence to be able to do that, to be honest, right?
Yeah, you're right. I think it comes down to the fact that maybe in our brains we are overcomplicating it. We're thinking, well, it's got to be X, Y, and Z, and it's got to look like this. And we might see pictures on Pinterest of meal prep, and it's all fancy pants. But
Yeah.
literally, if you can roll a ball, you can prep some protein. Yeah, no, that's good. So, what's the best way for people to organize meal planning and meal prep to build this routine?
Yeah, I would just start with planning one day ahead to start. I think that's pick one thing to do. So it might be planning one day ahead. Okay, what am I going to eat tomorrow? And what do I need to do to be able to do that? What do I need in the house? What do I need to, do I want to prep anything now? Like, what do I need to have ready for me to be able to do that? The other thing you could do is you could just say, okay, this week I'm just going to prep one batch of protein ahead of time. Just one. That's the one thing I'm going to do this week to help myself, to help my future self, to save time for my future self so that she doesn't need to worry about that. So just start small. I always advise to just take a look at your schedule, right? When are you going to make this happen? What's your schedule look like? When I plan and prep on Sunday, I have, I wish I could show you the board. I have like a whole board that my kids can look at that has probably 20 options on it. And then we take it and we look at what our schedule is for the week. Who has baseball? Like, where is baseball this week? The games. Where am I going for soccer? Am I on carpool duty this week or not? Like, that's all going to dictate what I'm going to be here for to do, or whether I'm going to need to bring my food with me because I'm sitting for 3 hours at a soccer field because I'm on carpool duty that week, right? So really taking a look at your schedule ahead of time before you make the plan, I think that's a really key piece to get started with this process and set yourself up for success.
Why do people fall off?
Oh, so many good reasons, so many reasons, right? Um, People fall off because they think they make a mistake and they're like, forget it, I can't do this. That didn't work, right? It's really our human brain is the bottom line of why people fall off. So that would be the bottom line is our human brain. It could be making a mistake. It could just be our human brain decides they want something different. You could go through all of the work, and it's really not that much work, but you could do the work to prep the food. You could have it in the refrigerator, ready to go. You could bring it to work with you, but then someone brings in pizza or someone brings in, other food and you don't follow through. And that's just because, again, of that primitive brain that has that urge that wants to do what other people are doing or says, ooh, that smells good. I'm not going to eat what I brought. And that's just a question of learning to manage your mind, of learning to manage urges, right? Great. You have an urge. So what? An urge is
Hmm.
just a feeling. It will not hurt you.
Yeah.
You know, you planned ahead, you stick to your plan and you do it. And if you make a mistake, so what? You move on. We all make mistakes. It
Yeah.
happens.
And I always say that quick reset is really important, right? The very next meal, the very next day. We don't
Yeah.
wait till January 1st to reset.
Yeah,
Oh,
for sure.
well, there goes December. I messed up on Thanksgiving in November, so there goes December, right? It's not that. And so I guess the question really is that it is mindset, right? And I love what you said about the urge. Yes, you have these urge. Yes, you have these uncomfortable feelings. And so what? Everyone gets them. What are you going to do? How are you going to talk to yourself to move through those things and stay the course to what you said you wanted to do in the first place?
Yeah, I really think a key piece of that is to remember why and having many whys, right?
Mm.
Because we can pull those whys out of our back pocket during those times. And I think like the long-term whys, if you're working to reduce body fat, like why is that? Why is that important to you? So I consider those long-term whys, but also acutely, how will I feel? Like, how will my gut feel after I eat that food versus what I had planned? Right? What will my energy level be like? Will I have enough energy to do what I want to do the rest of the day if I have the, muffin for breakfast instead of having the breakfast that I planned? And there's nothing wrong with the muffin. I don't want to I'm not vilifying food, but just keeping in mind that how do you feel after you eat certain foods? And are you wanting that consequence? And really
Yeah.
just keeping, yeah.
So what I hear you saying is that it's that constant check-in. You're constantly checking in with yourself. Can I ask you a question? What is your why?
My why for what? I have lots of whys.
What's what's your why for staying the course, for doing the
Yeah.
meal prep, for eating healthy
Yeah.
foods? What
Yeah.
drives you? Yeah.
Um, Energy throughout the day. I do a lot. I have three jobs. So I have a day job and I have two other things that I do as well. I coach women in a couple of different settings. So I want to have energy for that. If I'm on a call at 8 o'clock at night, I want to have energy for that. I don't want to be drained. So that's one of my whys for sustaining my energy throughout the day. And then also, I'm an athlete. I run, I lift. I like the way I feel when I eat a certain way, and I want to maintain my muscle as I grow older as well. So really, that's like a three prong. So I have my, acute, like my energies throughout the day. I want to be able to perform in the gym. I practice progressive overload. I want to be increasing my weights over time. I want to be building muscle, and I want to be strong as I get older. I'm 46 years old. I'm not getting any younger. And I want to be functional and I want to be able to do this for a long time.
Do you feel like in those moments where you don't feel like prepping, you don't feel like training, like all of us have those moments and they come, are you able to pull those things out of your back pocket or from deep within inside you and say, okay, remember, Tracy, this is what you said, and this is what you wanted, and this is what it takes to get what you wanted?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So when I wake up in the morning, when I don't want to exercise, I do pull that out. When
Yeah.
it comes to meal prepping on a Sunday, like taking an hour to do that, or whether it's a Sunday or a Monday night, my why for that is I do not want to be scrambling on weeknights. I want to come home and if I need to eat at one time and one of my kids needs to eat at another time, I want dinner to be ready. I want to be able to heat it up quickly and I want everyone to be able to get what they need, including myself, so that I can enjoy my evening. I can enjoy doing other things. I have the energy and the time to go coach my daughter in her soccer team. I have the energy to get on that coaching call and to do that workshop at 8 o'clock at night. I don't want to be scrambling all night. So that's my why for taking the time to plan and prep.
So no doubt you've experienced the scramble.
I sure have, which is exactly why I created this system to help
Yeah.
other moms. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
It's
Yeah.
interesting though, and don't you find this? I find this with a lot of clients and periodically with myself as well, though. You say you want one thing, we really do. And I feel like deep down, you do want that. You do want to feel more energized. You do want to be organized. You do want to grow muscle. And then it's just an easy slip into not doing the thing that you said you were going to do, right? It happens lots. And if only we could bottle and sell the byproduct of doing those things, right? If only we could take a pill and say, this is how you're going to feel right after your workout. I promise you, you're going to feel like you're going to get that endorphin flood. It's going to feel
Yeah.
amazing. But right before the workout, we're like, I'm dying. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And if you could just remember and recall those feelings, but sometimes that's just not available to us, is it? I just wish it was more available, but we do have to rely on, that whatever the past outcome was, it's going to happen again. So you've just got to push through, like you said, that limbic friction, that urge to just sit and do nothing. And if you just push through, you're going to be so thrilled with yourself that you actually have a fridge full of prepped food. You're going to be so thrilled with yourself that you've completed the workout and that you feel now you get to have the reward of all of that endorphin and good feeling, high increased serotonin and all the rest.
Well, that's discipline, right? Like
That's
that's
disciplining.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's really leaning into discipline. And I hear this all the time, like, oh, I'm just not motivated. You know
Mm,
what? You don't have to be motivated.
yeah.
You can do something and not like doing it. Like we are built for that. We can do that. And so yeah, motivation is like that friend that is only there for the good times. Like she wants to go out and party at night. She doesn't want to drive you to the airport at 6:30 in the morning, right? It's not consistent. And discipline's your ride or die. Discipline is going to be there for it all. And so really kind of leaning into that and being willing to do things that you might not want to do in the moment and knowing that you're doing it for your future self. And your future self might be yourself later on tonight. It might be your tomorrow self. It might be yourself in a month, and it might be yourself in 2 years from now or 10 years from now, frankly.
I like that. The discipline really is the key. Really increasing our resilience, right? Getting back after something has brought us down. And we all have those moments within our lives where we've had circumstances, maybe a death, maybe a separation, maybe the loss of a job, and it does bring you down. And so it's that getting back up, right? It's moving forward. It's what Angela Ducksworth calls grit,
Yeah.
right? Do you have that capacity to stay in the pocket?
Yeah.
And if you don't, I think these are also skills that you can work on. These are also things that you can read about and listen to podcasts about and practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Like grit, like stick with itness. I think I love that concept. And I absolutely think that what works for one person might not work for another. And what I mean by that is if you have had a series of events where you're just, you haven't, moved your body in a while and you're starting from scratch. Um, for some people, it works really well to pull the band-aid off and get right back into it, right? For other people, it works really well to use the something, the all or something concept, right? If I can just get out for 2 10-minute walks today, that something is better than nothing. And just building the momentum on that. So really figuring out what works for you, and just starting somewhere. Right. Like I said, it just could be a 10-minute walk. It could be 10 minutes of body weight, training, going onto your site and just pulling one of the from Instagram, pulling one of your workouts and do it without weight just to get yourself moving is just key.
I think those are really good tips because you're right. Everyone is different. Everyone needs to approach this differently and individually. So, understanding how you function best and taking what Tracy just said, it's either going to be maybe all or nothing, get back on the horse, or just do something. Our motto is at Move Daily Fitness, if nothing else, move daily. And I say that because even if you can't fully dial in your nutrition, even if you don't fully have that self care dialed in, just do something. Ovid says, dripping water on the stone hollows it out, not through force, but through persistence. And it's just the drip, it's the daily drip, drip, drip. And it might be just a little micro process that you're starting to add to your day. And it could be just a little bit of meal prep, and it could be just a little bit of walking or a little bit of self care. But that is what's going to help you move the needle toward better health over time. Tracy, where can our listeners find you? Would you let us know where they can find you on social or website?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on Facebook and Instagram at tracysmithlifecoach.com. Well, at Tracy Smith Life Coach on Facebook and Instagram. My website is www.tracysmithlifecoach.com. I talk a lot more there about ditching the dinnertime scramble. I have a course that's linked on my website, and there's lots of free resources there as well for your audience as well.
That's excellent. Yes. So if you have trouble with this meal prep, so many great tips here today from you, Tracy. So thank you for that. But if you want to go a little bit deeper, all of those links will be below the podcast. So make sure that you check that out. If you're watching on YouTube, the links are below in the caption. Well, thank you so much for all of that. Thanks for joining us, to all of you movers, and join us next time for the next Move Daily Talks.